Our topic in short, CE versus FCC. What's the actual difference? What does it all mean? What are the common misconceptions and how do you navigate that? So I gave this presentation more than one title because frankly, you need to have a view on it from different angles to actually know about it. So there's always the very America-centric perspective that you will see a lot of times on the internet. If you Google stuff, if you ask AI about that, you will always get the impression that these regulations, depending on where in the world, have something to do with each other, are comparable in some way or not. But actually, they are very separate and they have very significant differences, and you need to know about these. So how does the process actually work? That's our focus. We're looking at the differences and we're looking at some common misconceptions. So here's our agenda for today. So we're looking at the common misconceptions, the things that people quite often get wrong, the things that you might not be aware of that actually matter. We're looking at what certification, the word certification, means in the context of CE, FCC, of the context of electronics products. There is always a context with the environment, with the user, with whoever is producing the device and whoever is using the device. Then we'll look at some specific differences between the European way and the American way, because these are often conflated, confused, or basically there's a lot of outdated information out there that can be quoted over and over again. So there will be the trouble with applying outdated regulation to current products, which will yield in not the satisfying result that you're hoping for. And then we're looking about compliance in general, because CE certification is not just EMC. It's not just electromagnetic compatibility. It's not just radio interference. This is very often, as an electrical engineer, you will look at your product from just the perspective of an engineer. And this is often very EMC focused. You're really focused on getting this thing to pass the testing. But actually, before you can get close to testing, you have to find out what are the actual rules that apply to your product, which tests are actually required, and the best, the biggest margin in EMC results, where you pass it with flying colors and there's no problem whatsoever, is completely worthless if your product does not hold up to all the other requirements. So even if EMC is going perfectly well, if you basically fail safety testing or some basic requirements that are mandated by the General Product Safety Regulation, by the various CE directives, or some other regulations that may apply to your product, the whole testing was good for nothing because there's an essential requirement that you missed before that. So you want to make sure that you actually know what you're dealing with and that you're actually applying all the processes correctly before going to testing, because all these processes will also decide which tests are actually needed for your product. And speaking about that, we're also talking about how to figure that out for your product, because one universal truth holds in compliance. It's two words, and that is it depends. There is no way for me to give a valid answer to a very general question apart from it depends, because it always depends on the specifics of your product. Each device has to be examined as it is, as a unique thing. You can't just apply stuff that apply to one product or that you think apply to one product to another. You always have to get a fresh look on it with its actual context, with its physical makeup, with its context with the environment, and with the actual user. So the way to figure it out can only be to really assess your product as it is on its own, and not in like just comparing it with other products. So if you put your questions in, I will try to answer them as good as possible. but it will always boil down to some very specifics of your product. And if I don't know all the specifics about your product, the actual answer might be a bit different. So it's all in the details. Before we look at the common misconceptions, I want to look at the word certification. Generally, in the public eye, certification can mean different things. The word certification is not defined in one monolith. It can mean different things depending on the context. A lot of people have driver's licenses, and some may call them driver certification. They are documents that allow you to do something, and this is the way certification for your products are often seen in the public eye. It's like a piece of paper that allows you to do a specific thing. But that's actually not the case. Certification does not mean here's a piece of paper that allows you to bring a product to market. That would mean there is a general body that looks at a product and says yes or no, but this is not the case with CE. It doesn't work like that. Certification is a process, and the process can differ wherever you are in the world, and it differs how your project or your product is actually constructed, what it does, and who uses it. So there's always a lot of factors that factor into this. And this is also one of the big reasons why I'm very hesitant of recommending any checklists, for example, because to actually get the right assessment for which process applies to a specific product, that checklist must have thousands of questions that are all interlinked with if then else logic behind them to give you the right answer. It's always a process for you to figure out what rules apply to your product. Is there a way to change your product to have an easier time with certification? And is there a way to be proactive about certification from an early stage to have an overall easier process to maybe avoid specific expensive tests? Or can I do the whole process myself? Is it possible to have a full self-certification? Or do I have to involve a notified body? And very often, that's a very common misconception. The term notified body in regards to CE is often set in relations to the FCC authorized laboratories, the FCC themselves, which is an authority that then issues a certification. This is not related at all. It's completely different. So the first thing we have to really get into our heads is these are two completely independent things. FCC is strictly in the United States, and it only deals with everything that has to do with radio communications in the broadest sense. So also EMC, electromagnetic compatibility, deals with radio waves. It has something to do with that. So that's also part of the FCC process. CE, on the other hand, is not just that. CE is a much bigger process. It's a much bigger topic. It does deal with a lot more things than just radio communications. The RED directive, RED, that is the radio equipment directive, and this specifically deals with the part that the FCC also deals with it. But this is just one of many, I think it's currently 25 or 27 regulations that have some mandate in the CE marking process. So it's not just one regulation that you have to look at, there are several. And it's really important that that's why I wrote it on the slide specifically. The certification in both cases is a process, but the process is different. And in particular, in the CE process, this process is made up of many other processes. And the first step in that is know where to start and which process applies to your product. So, in one sentence, self-certification means you, the manufacturer, are the party responsible for assessing the product, and you decide by reading the laws, basically, and following the laws, which process applies to your product. Then you follow that process, and this process will make sure that it fulfills all the requirements set in the law. And the declaration of conformity, the CE declaration, the CE mark on your product, this is the document that then says, I, the manufacturer of this product, in my own sole responsibility, declare that this product fulfills all the requirements that are applicable to it. I list all the requirements. I list the way that I proved conformity, which is usually by applying the harmonized standards that have a presumption of conformity. We may get